ReZero, Season 2, Episode 4. Subaru is home. Subaru Homecoming. Oh, he can do jujitsu? Hidden talent we haven't seen yet. I guess it's kind of hard to grapple people who are blasting you with magic spells. Get out of here, Mom. We're wrestling. Did you just say skinship? Maybe his family's just too good. Maybe that's the problem. His parents just too nice? His life too easy? Not enough struggle? This also feels like a dream. It's just peas, eat them. Why do people hate peas? They're fine, they're great, delicious. Put some salt in it, just salt it. You don't like it? Put some salt on it. It's probably great now. Put it in a hamburger and it becomes amazing. This itself has the potential to be a groundbreaking development for Subaru's characterization. Because he's doing all this stuff in ReZero and he can't even handle peas. He couldn't even do dinner. He's a picky eater and now he's out here drinking witch pea. What was it I heard recently? I heard one like that. Oh, it was like, I don't like eating foods that have a layered feeling, like pineapple. That was a first for me. I hadn't heard that before. Again, just put some salt on it. There you go. Make it into something you like a hamburger. And put some salt on it. You could have mixed it a little bit better. He's just taking all the rice. Okay. Oh, is he a teacher? Oh, is he? Wait, what? This could be a flashback and a dream simultaneously. He's allowed to skip school? Better not go at all. You can't be late. Unless he suffered from this. You suffer from this. There's a lot of like unspoken tension in this house, Ben. Parenting is so perilous. I'm not a parent. Thank God. I can imagine one of the big difficulties is trying to walk that line between friend and authority. Watching these parental dynamics in shows, it always makes me think about my parents and feel sympathetic for the difficulties they must have faced and maybe still face. It's a unique relationship because unlike friends and partners, there's no filtering process. You know, like you meet people and it doesn't click. They just don't become friends and you move on. You can't filter for your parents or kids that you have responsibility for them. You can't always know what's the best thing for them. Having everything really easy and good and pleasant and friendly isn't necessarily great because people need to make their own mistakes. That's part of their adventure. At the same time, people making mistakes can be really big mistakes that can seriously damage their life. So without being able to know which is which for the person necessarily, and given the fact that they're real people with full identities trying to become adults and develop autonomy, how much do you let slide? Because it's not clear to me either that you, by sheer force, exert all the tendencies you think are perfect and maybe traditionally are perfect, that's great for the child either, because what happens when that authority is removed? You know, what happens when they wake up one day and realize none of their choices were their own? Maybe they're a little bit soft. I don't know. And you want to like them. Ideally, you have a good relationship with your kids, but not always possible if you see something really important for them. And that's even eliminating a lot of the pitfalls of parenting, like wanting them to achieve the things you failed at, having a very narrow and specific vision for what they have to be, resenting them for the changes that they forced in your life. It's just a total minefield. This does feel dreamlike. Maybe it's just Japan. Maybe the real world is the dream. Maybe they found him on the road, Silent Hill style. Shouldn't you be in school? What are you gonna call the cops, you narc? The real witch is school. Witch of school. Damn, Dad. Trying to do your son dirty. This is weird. I don't know. What is happening? Yeah, that seems like a deliberate reference to Amelia. Is this the trial? I need to go to school. I want to be your friend and I'm scared, but please, you need to go to school. You just earned major points. Oh my god, why does it feel so good to hear after all these years of doing shows where everyone always worships it? When I dropped out of high school, the amount of people told me that I was ruining my life. And I have the benefit of some time after school. You kind of see how it goes. And I can't say that school has zero impact on people's lives, but I think there are much, much bigger things. Like there are people I know who did really well in school who also crushed it, and people who did terrible in school and crushed it, and also people in both categories who seem relatively unsatisfied with the way things went. I think the key difference is probably something much more basic, like just who the people are, what their outlooks are, and their approaches to life. What is their underlying process? School ends up being, like a lot of things, just a tool. It depends on who's using it. It's a good moment, because those sort of, even the innocuous things end up being great memories.
Subaru.
What is happening? This is so confusing. The way I'm thinking about this right now, it's both a flashback and a dream sequence as part of the trial. If it is a flashback, then he was always intertwined with this. It doesn't seem like he just abruptly entered this world, more like it's part of whatever this is, this cyclical thing. What's your takeaway from that experience? There is a girl I like. Okay, Amelia saving Subaru from our world to the real world. Oh? This is also extreme self-awareness to be able to say this at this age. Oh god. Yeah. Super real. At least it happened to him a little bit younger than me. Yeah, it's running away. Whoa, this is sort of alarmingly relatable in ways that are actually uncomfortable. As a kid, if you get a lot of praise for things that just come naturally to you, or even worse, aren't even worth praising, it's very easy to internalize that that greatness, that specialness, is just an intrinsic quality of you, no matter what happens. And I'm talking about something separately from love or care. I think it's important to know when you're a kid that you're loved and cared for. But then in terms of esteem or praise for things, that's a little bit different, because if it's with the lens of trying to prepare someone for the world and one's journey through life, then it's not something you already have. It's something that you probably have to develop tools for. In fact, you probably wouldn't want it that way anyway. I think that's one of the biggest lies we're told as kids, is that you're perfect the way you are. It's especially bad if that's in your head determined as a sort of ranking or comparative thing, competition with others. And now you have this label of like center of the universe, star of the world, whatever. But inevitably, as you get older, things get more challenging and you probably can't coast in everything, probably in nothing for your entire life. But you now have a title to defend, because that is one of the linchpins of your self-identity and core self-worth. But if this starts to happen a little bit late in development, well, you've never really had to develop the tools or the mindset to link work, effort, and action and reflection to doing good things and getting the rewards of it that way. So you're just in this weird, painful place where you're engaging in a thing that is robbing you of your self-identity. And so by far the easiest thing to do is to write it off as not important. And then you're kind of trapped, because going back into that thing means starting off at a worse position than you were before. And you have to work really hard to keep that narrative that actually my way is the right way and better than everyone else. I'm still special by virtue of who I am and my choices. What's especially stunning to me about the speech, though, is the final part of it, because I've never heard that articulated, and that kind of hit close to home, which is the continuous acting out part. In my case, I had a very unique situation, because not only was school and athletics and socializing really easy for me as a kid, I also was a child actor, which means I was getting attention far beyond what I deserved. Actually, I think my parents handled that really well. The real difficulty came from people in my surrounding environment. So my teachers, my classmates, my extended family, other adults who, even though I wasn't super famous or anything, had a little bit of that like weirdly colored energy of like, I want to attach to this person's orbit for what I can receive vicariously, which is a very weird thing to receive even as an adult. But then as a kid, you don't know how to process it. So you just internalize the idea that you are really the center of the universe. Fast forward to high school, my acting career dies because of my height. Also, I was going to a specialized high school that started to get get a little bit difficult. And so I started failing classes. Couldn't cope with that directly, so I just stopped going to class. First, it was one class, the class that took me out, which was physics. Then it was the next class that was difficult. And then by the end of junior year, I was going to one class a day, which ironically enough was Japanese. And so with that route sort of closed, I had to find another avenue to get that personal utility I was used to. And so I guess the thing I settled on was more or less something like being the wild card who has really cool things happen outside of the traditional path. With the benefit of hindsight, I think it was a really important thing for me to go through that I would have gone through at some point eventually. I'm happy it happened then, and I'm also happy it led to some really great things. That being said, this is probably obvious given how emotionally invested I am about the anti-school stuff. It's not all pure healthy reason, right? There's a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I can't deny that I failed it. All those things are gone, and there's still a little bit of a hunger for that attention, for that esteem that was kind of my starting milieu of sentiment from my environment. And one thing that I've thought about a lot in the last couple of years is it can't go on forever. You can't just keep running around doing wildcard stuff and being random and enjoying the idea of surprising people with your next action. Because really what you realize is that while those things also can be really great and there is always other stuff in there like actual genuine enjoyment and appreciation of those things, part of it is you still being dominated and controlled and led around with a fishhook in your mouth that on the other end is tied to your emotional trauma as a kid. That's not freedom. That is actually counter to the very image you're trying to cultivate as like, I'm a free person living in the world of my own accord, rejecting the rules. One of my friends helped make this a little bit more clear for me. He's like, oh yeah, it's just because you're at war with yourself on two sides. One is that you have a really fun, adventurous, creative, unorthodox, contrarian side, but you long for mainstream acceptance and praise. And that's stung in the way that only the truth can sting. Man, being thought of as boring is the worst. Gotta be stupid to follow me. Yeah, they went back to school, their lives and stuff. This, of course, is not true. Ouch, that sucks. Oh, he did this in school too, and he didn't learn his lesson. Yeah, especially when you're young, things going badly, it's extra sensitive. I think it's the social stuff that makes it so much extra poignant. If it's going great, it's one of the best things you can experience in life. Like to look forward to going to school, to see your friends, where you have a lot of people who like you. If it's not, it's terrible. It's just no fun. It's something that follows you beyond the school. Your non-school hours are spent in a state of dread about the thought of going to school. Yeah, this is exactly what happened to me. It's nice to find where the limits are. If there's no limits... Okay. With your foot. Yeah, do drugs or something. Well, I mean, he got what he was asking for. Somehow, eventually. My reading of this, though, is not that Subaru wanted his parents to hate him, but that he was looking for some structure. How far can I fall before there's something solid I can stand on that I can build up from? Because you don't know until you have the experience, especially if you're really young, that a lot of the time, that's probably going to come from you. It's going to come from your will being fed up with what's going on. But being young, having not sort of taken that structure for yourself yet, having always relied on your parents for it, just internally, the way it is processed is the only way to find it is to keep sinking. Like, surely if I fall far enough, something will catch me that is stronger than me, so my terribleness can't break it. And then at last, finally, I have a place to start from. I think we can separate these two things. I think the love of someone, it can be unconditional, but there are other elements to a relationship than love. There's also requirements. There is expectation. There is desire for the best outcome for a person. And that might look like sternness. It might look like emotional force. It might look like disagreeing. I think we can kind of conceptualize all four 4 points in the quadrant. So you can be really harsh with someone and love them. You can be really harsh with someone and despise them. You can be really, really warm and kind to someone and love them, which ironically also maybe is damaging. And you can be really kind and warm to someone and hate them. By the way, this also is something not limited to just parent-child relationships. This is something a lot of people do as adults where they just don't know how to deal with something or they feel overwhelmed by it. So they kind of let it slide. They let it go on a little bit too long and the problems start to exponentially accumulate. But I think there's an underlying assumption there that eventually an authority will come and correct me and I'll have no choice and I'll deal with it then. That authority also possibly being a very dire situation. In another world. Yeah, there's some of that too, right? The distancing of identity. I can't figure out exactly what the father baggage is, though, because I can see two possibilities. The constant in both is that he's frequently compared to his father. But then from there, is it that he feels he can never live up to his father the way he's performing now, so he wants to distance himself? Or is it actually he thinks he's becoming his father and he doesn't have a very high opinion of his father? Is that what it is? Okay. Big shoes to fill. And this kind of hurts given his current location. And he never thought about them after he transitioned to the new world? This seems like a great relationship. Yeah, he's aware of the whole timeline in this dream. I guess it's catching up now. I mean, sympathy for Subaru in that, I actually think his not thinking about them, at least explicitly, is understandable. Because you're most affected by and you're dealing the most with whatever stage of life you're currently at. It's similar to the hierarchy of needs thing, where most of your emotional work and energy is going to be spent on the things that are the next up that are most pressing. So like you're not going to be thinking about your relationships when you can't find food. And for most people, you're probably not going to be able to work on super lofty things if you have no one around you as a social support. Maybe a more intuitive way of looking at it, throwing out the hierarchy, is just like whatever is the most pressing need, that is probably where most of your focus will be. And if there are other things in your life going well, you kind of just treat those as default and they don't require any special attention. So they're almost blind spots. Subaru seems to have entered this world at a very critical point of his life where he's most concerned with who he is and also romance. The thought of them just might not command that sort of pressing energy. I think that's one of the common journeys of life. It's the trope of you do the whole journey and then arrive at the destination only to realize you've come back to the same place. You kind of go through the whole gamut. You figure out the different elements of your life. And then you're like, oh, the most important things were the really special things I had from the beginning, which is not to say that the journey wasn't important or that you made a mistake by leaving. Having gone through the journey makes you appreciate the good things all the much more and also makes you more capable of contributing to them. I think it's possible to skip the journey and just appreciate the things you have, but I think for almost everyone, the reality of that is it ends up being sour grapes. This is a very similar thing to what we're seeing with Subaru in his self-reflecting flashback of like, nah, I don't need to go on a journey. I don't need to make anything of myself. Anyway, I gotta take care of my family. I think that's perfectly fine if that's authentic, but I think rarely is that authentic. I think typically that's just an evasive maneuver of having to do the difficult adventure. This is another thing I relate to quite strongly because I was very, very quick to leave home and start traveling. And yeah, I miss my parents and I miss my friends, but I was sort of consumed with the adventure of it and the new experiences I was having, which in hindsight were things I really needed. They were kind of gaps in my development. That was sort of the catching up to the adult life stuff that I was avoiding. Now that some time has passed and I've already incorporated a lot of the best, most important messages from those experiences, increasingly I start to think about the people that I really care about and my friends and family. How can I create a situation where I'm best looking out for them, etc. And I don't know that that would have happened without the leaving of it, if that makes sense. That itself is a lot. Okay, Jing. He's about to get obliterated at school again, but at least he's going back. That's huge. There's a lot of momentum to this stuff too. It's hard to restart because you eat a lot of dirt. What does this kid eat?
ほらね。
Mom would choose mayonnaise.
お母さんは嬉しいけど悪目立ちするんじゃない？明日できることは明日にしたら？
そうやって息子のやる気の出
Your mom, don't enable this now. You're walking him to school? Yeah, you want to start him off on the right foot, no?
お父さんと何話してたの？
A lot of stuff.
大したことは
It was very special.
スバルは頑張り屋さんだったし、生地いろいろとできたもんね。お父さんがむやみに多趣味だったせいでいろんな機会もあったし、疲れちゃうよね。
It's weird how that ends up being a curse.
あのね、スバル。親は子供が思ってるより
Yeah, they're also adults. They've been through stuff themselves.
小さい頃は座薬だって入れたことあるんだからお尻の穴まで見てるんです
Don't bring this up so close to school, please.
どうにかしてあげられるんならしてあげたんだけどね。お母さんが何をしてもきっとダメになっちゃいそうだったから。
That also is a challenge of it. If kids are really that determined to crash into the dirt, they will. That analogy before of people trying to fall all the way down till they hit bottom, it's not even that they're passively falling. They're also fighting the obstacles that rise up to try to catch them because they want to be absolutely sure it's real structure. So it can end up being a real dogfight.
でもお母さんでもお父さんでもない誰かが何とかしてくれたんだよね。
A higher authority, a crush, someone whose opinion we actually value.
俺が釣り合うかどうかの問題じゃねえんだよ。誰かにやるぐらいなら釣り合わなくても俺のもんにする。それから俺の価値を積み上げるさ。
やっぱり
Living a little bit out of your skis
だね。
and forcing yourself to catch up.
スバルの半分はお母さんなんだから。お父さんの半分までかっこよくなったらノルマ達成じゃない。お父さんの半分かっこよくなって残り半分スバルになったらいいんじゃない？
That's a very interesting take that wouldn't have occurred to me. Actually, that's kind of nice though.
お父さんみたいになりたいって思いながらスバルになるんだよ。
And will inevitably be those things anyway. I mean, you're going to take things from your parents, whether it's genetic or learned. Mom also seems really cool. There's something a little bit sarcastic about her, a little bit teasing without feet headbutts about what she was saying. There are ways in which I will never, ever come close to being able to do what my parents do, what they are. But actually, I think that's fine. You have the benefit of getting to the point of diminishing marginal returns of what they have in greatness in spades very quickly. Like you can get 50% of what they have or 75% of what they have almost effortlessly. And that gives you a huge leg up. And then you can devote the rest of your skill points into the things that are a best fit for you to sort of like raise the game one. That I think is what happens when it goes well. I actually think it can go wrong if you're trying to exactly be as good or better than your parents in a way that is not naturally what you are.
長いお別れになる。ちょっと遠くて連絡とかもできそうにないんだ。でもどんなとこにいても俺は二人のことを思ってるし。
It's good that he gets a chance to say this in some form.
俺結局
Also not the full truth.
さあ泣いて最後に笑えたらそれで全部大丈夫。大事なのは最初でも途中でもなくって最後なんだから。
Interesting.
結果良ければオールオーケーってこと？
そういう受け取り方とは違います。
That's odd one. I do really like the perspective and framing of it. As long as you're alive, the point you're at right now is not the final assessment. It may very well be that either this is something you had to go through to get the lessons you needed. This might be happening directly as a result of your actions, which came from something you don't understand. And so the results can help you understand it. Or if it's something that you had no role in whatsoever, it is still something you can learn from, something you can grow from. If the terrible situation you're going through at any given point informs something greater later that is of net benefit to you in the world, then that process itself can be a really beautiful thing and can be, even though it feels inconceivable at times, something to be grateful for. And looking at it that way, I think, is one way of getting over the immediate, most pressing challenges at any given moment in time, no matter how dark they are. You know, the spirit of, I can figure this out, I can get through this. This is not permanent. I guess what maybe I don't love about Subaru's reading of it is I think you also don't want to trivialize the path and you really want to focus on the process. For example, to use an extreme, I don't like the idea of the ends justifying the means. I think you are also writing your story and the points in your life do matter. Your choices matter in the moment. Maybe not even as much for their outcome, but as for what you're building in yourself as a process of growing.
そうだ。スバルスバル忘れてた。
You forgot your P's.
いってらっしゃい。
He was going to mini stop. He didn't actually have these conversations, did he? This is sort of this inner emotional resolution.
行ってきます。
I guess the real thing that comes out of it is developing a greater understanding and appreciation for his parents, which can fuel a resolve in himself. Oh, hi. It's you.
自分の過去と向き合う時間は君に何をもたらしたかな?
Parent and child. That was quite the episode. Came out of nowhere, but amazing. It's really funny to me, like, I've gone through a little bit of a transition in the show where I'm watching Subaru struggle, and, like, the first instinct is to reject and distance myself from him. Speaking of, like, early season 1, seeing his mistakes as kind of obvious and juvenile and not really relating to him too strongly, or not even that, not wanting to relate to him strongly because it's uncomfortable. But as Subaru starts to go through this process of self-reflection and self-honesty, and also in a meta way outside of the show, being inspired by comments I've gotten about how much watching Subaru's journey has helped people come to terms with certain aspects of their own personalities, I've become more receptive of the idea that actually it's my mistake to be that quick to distance myself from him. That actually that thing, that instinct, is a very function of the things I don't like about Subaru's character. The very things Subaru himself is trying to free himself of. And in this episode, lo and behold, it's my backstory to like a weird, uncanny degree of accuracy. Though some of that probably can be chalked up to the fact that I'm not as unique as I want to believe I am. Turns out there are not that many things that are unique to human experience. I bet this kind of thing is actually quite broadly relatable. In fact, there's many ways he's ahead of me. His leadership is something that would be very difficult for me to do at this point. I also really love it as a backstory. A lot of media takes the approach of, we're going to start our character off in objectively just a terrible, horrific, tragic situation. And so their greatness can then be contrasted with their starting point so that there's no doubt at all that they actually are good genuinely. And that is very compelling. But I mean, I think this maybe is more common to modern life. Sort of the sadness and existential angst and slow, dull, aching pain of comfort, if that makes sense. Having had every possible advantage and having only yourself to blame. That's a tough one. Realizing that your anger, your pain comes from the fact that you were given too much, then hating yourself for even feeling angry about that. Like, what kind of a terrible monster am I? How does that make any sense? Definitely can't say that out loud because of how I'll be mocked for it. It's crazy because I'm guessing this is a dream fantasy where he can enter and sort of revisit and re-interact given his upgraded knowledge set. So it's very supernatural, but also it ends up being completely real because this is the kind of thing that you do in normal life without any kind of magical trial. You grow up, you develop new understanding of things, and then you use those skills and use that lens to look back at where you came from, and it suddenly exists in this new 3D that, if done well, has a way of kind of like neutralizing the venom a little bit of it. It's like, oh, this wasn't malice. This wasn't terribleness. This wasn't evil. This perhaps wasn't a failure. It was just the only way things could have gone at that moment, given that mix of ingredients. Wow, actually, there was some really good stuff there, and that good stuff is still salvageable now. All those good things I can now then take forward into the world. I can be a better person for my family, whether it's the family I came from or my family in the future. My parents maybe actually did really want the best for me, and they just did things the way they thought was best, and it's challenging to be a parent, and I was not making it easy, and that's okay because I didn't understand, and I needed to go through that. I needed to learn that lesson because that's where I was at the time, etc., etc. There's like this great wave of relief, I think, that can come as a result of that introspection once the relevant tools have been accumulated. So it works narratively as part of the story, but it almost can exist as a standalone thing without any of the events of the plot. But about the plot, it's weird because it almost feels like this was a gift. It feels like the Witch of Greed is helping Subaru become better, which doesn't seem that evil so far. It seems kind of nice. Also wondering if the trials are the same for everyone. Was Emilia subject to the same thing and failed to confront her past, or is this a special handmade version for Subaru specifically?